There are a few things that are important, in my opinion, if you want to be a successful or effective design leader. First of all, collaboration. By the way, when I started in 3M, I introduced collaborative creativity as a theme for design. And so actually what I was saying is, hey, we are here as a creative force and we want to collaborate with all of you.
Hi, I'm Maria and welcome to Gut Talks, a podcast about creative thinking in business and beyond. I'm thrilled to welcome Eric Quint, one of the world's first chief design officers appointed by a Fortune 100 company. Eric served as senior vice president and chief brand and design officer at 3M, where he built and scaled the design practice as a function. He previously led design at Royal Philips. He's co-author of the Stanford University Press book, Design Leadership Ignited, and various white papers, which fundamentally changed how I think about the impact of what I do and how I think as a designer. With over 20 years of international experience in executive design leadership, leading design at enterprise scale, Eric knows exactly how organizations identify, develop, and deliver value. In our conversation that could have lasted forever, we explore the difference between design as tactics versus design as strategy, why most CEOs have no idea how much they're actually investing in design, the evolution of design leadership roles, and why design thinking doesn't make everyone a designer, and more. Super excited to share this one with you. Let's go. But before we do, I'd appreciate if you'd subscribe, leave a review or a comment. It's the only way to get feedback that we're not actually shouting into the void and reach more people. Now, seriously, let's get started.
Hi, I'm Eric Quint. I'm at Gut Talks, ggutt.
Cool. Eric, thank you so much for being on Gut Talks. I want to give a quick shout out to Elisa Chiodo, who introduced us, because we were at the Domus Academy for a lecture of yours. So it was great to see you live, presenting your thoughts and your book. If anyone's listening or watching this, you can see the book. If you're not, it's called Design Leadership Ignited, Elevating Design at Scale. And this book, as I told Eric, I read it 1.5 times, and it made me rethink everything I do, rethinking, the impact one can have on the medium and long term and how to get things done. And I just would like to have the perspective of you, Eric, on where design is heading to and the understanding of design. Maybe we get started with this one. What problem does design actually solve for a large organization today?
Well, yeah, I rather not like to talk in terms of problems, but opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And I think design can deliver a lot of opportunities to companies, but also any organization. It can be also an academic organization or a governmental organization, a service organization or a products organization. And I think what design can do is, of course, the uniqueness of design is that it brings imagination and creativity. That are, I think, the two core capabilities that designers are bringing to the table. And what they can do through imagination and creativity is to advance innovation, and they can enhance customer experience or brand experience. And of course, you do that in order to create value and impact. And what I see is that there are many organizations struggling in understanding what design can do, but also in enabling design to do and be at their best. And that's because they are continuously mingling up design as a tactics versus design as a strategy. And I think, as you have read in the book, my approach was always very much about driving design as a strategy, because it has much more impact if you drive it as a strategy compared to as a tactics, where, to be clear, design as a tactics is very much seen as design is delivering aesthetical excellence, the beautification of products and websites and packages and whatever you have to design. While design as a strategy is going far more deeper and is much more a longer term approach, where you start to focus more on value creation on the long term, and where there is much more a systemic approach to design. And with all the increase of complexities that we have nowadays in terms of, take the United Nations sustainability goals, these are huge topics on sustainability and mobility and healthcare and education. And in order to impact those challenges, I think there's a strategic, systemic approach needed in order to drive progress. The other thing, there's a big difference between design as a tactic and design as a strategy is that the design as a tactic is very often driven by, say, expertise-based decision-making. In many cases, the one who is the highest in authority is deciding what we are going to do. And in terms of strategic design as a strategy, you are much more focusing on research-based decision-making. So your insights, whether it's customer or market insights or technology insights, they are hopefully are the base for decision-making. And if you are on a tactical level, you have very much a project-by-project approach, which is okay. But if you think more on a systemic level, then you are more contributing value through design on an ecosystem level, and you have much more of a kind of a portfolio approach. Think, for instance, about all service design that has exploded immensely the last 5 years by many service organizations, banks and insurance companies and whatever we all have to hire designers and build design teams. Particularly in that case, it's all about systemic design. You need to start to think in terms of software platforms and systemic solutions, because you cannot solve things from single points, touch points view anymore. So if you think about the design and design leadership, the design leader is there to enable the building of a design team, but also to maximize through that design team the value and the impact that can be created by the organization you work for. A company, corporation, delivering products or services or governments or educational institutes or whatever.
Yeah, you touched on many things here, and any size of organization and kind and type. My question, though, you mentioned imagination and creativity and strategy and tactics and value creation. Obviously, how do you sell this to an organization or to, I would say, the CEO of a company, if they don't have this exposure and, put you as a designer in the bracket? Obviously, you need to speak the business language and the design language, but how do you get to that next step? Or just get this door, yeah.
Very often that question, and also particularly when I'm in Asia, where design is far more linked to, say, implementation and manufacturing. But yeah, for me, it's a bit also a choice. So as a design leader, you can have a choice and make a choice how you want to position design. And so when I came into 3M, I positioned design immediately from day one as a strategic capability. So, okay, you can do that. But then secondly, you need to start to engage with your main stakeholders and start to give show examples from outside of the company, because if you're new to the company, then there's not maybe very good cases yet. And I think it all comes down by show, don't tell. You have to start to immediately create projects that can help you to demonstrate the value of design on a more strategic level. I started to do that immediately because 3M is an innovation technology company. Everybody was immediately making the connection to design as a support to innovation, so at the front end of the innovation process. But there's a nice book out there a long time ago from McKinsey talking about what is the function of a company. And so any company has to identify value, and then has to develop the value, and then has to deliver that value. That's the most simple way of looking at a company. And in my opinion, design is across all those three phases or stages involved in creating value and helping the company. So it is in the identification of value is where you focus very much on, technology conversion and working together with the R&D company departments and teams to understand what kind of technologies they are developing and start to create ideas of how to apply all of that. But then even if you have come up with all those great ideas, the challenge is to pick the best idea, because there are thousands of ideas. But what is the best idea, which is not an easy thing. So I have, if I present in my keynotes, I have that image of a person in a stack of hundreds of Post-it notes. And then my question is how to select the best idea. And how can you select that best idea? Well, you do that by being prepared. So you need to have your research and market knowledge and technology and competition and all of that in the picture, in order to help you to prioritize all of your ideas. But then if you have selected the right idea, you need to develop that idea. So then it is where the hands-on design work comes, where you have to make the geometry of the product, or you need to make the layout of the web pages, or whatever you need to do, and the packages and all the touch points. And then there is a phase where the product is ready, and then the product needs to be delivered. That means shipped to the marketplace. And so there you can help as designers to design point of sale, or you can design great packages, or you can help to create engaging websites where there's product information about the product and where you can order the product. And so design is actually across all of that involved. And so that is where you can create value.
Yeah, I'm going to jump back and forth here. But we don't see many design leadership roles kind of advertised, even if you have roles like head of design, VP of design, whatever. That's, I would say, a bit closer, let's say, to chief design officer, which was your role. It's much more hands-on in the way they advertise it, what I've seen out there. It depends also on who's writing these roles, and now with AI. But how do you see this landscape evolving?
Well, I see a few things happening. I see a lot of populism in relation to the roles of executive design roles, so chief design officer. If you search on LinkedIn on chief design officer, I don't know, probably you get 150,000 people that have a chief design officer role. My suspect is that probably only a couple of percentages are really in a chief design officer's role. So what I always say, a chief design officer role is given to you by others, and it is not given by yourself, to yourself. What I see is that there are many companies that recognize that creativity and imagination and design is needed and can enhance indeed their innovation and their brand experience and customer experience, but they don't know how to manage it. And they don't know how to profile it. And so what they do is they start to engage with outplacement and recruitment agencies. And those recruitment agencies, in my opinion, in many cases, have also not very much clue about what a role like that is. So I have seen many chief design officers' roles, descriptions, and I would not even consider to engage on these roles, because you can see they are written by people who might not fully understand what a role like that is. And by so, the companies that they offer these kind of roles for don't understand either. It all starts by one thing, and that is that we should recognize that design is a capability. And so that's the first thing. If you don't recognize that, then it's very difficult to talk about designers in your organization. So first, recognize design is a capability. Like, researchers, R&D people is a capability, and finance and marketing and manufacturing and so on. And so that is a bit, I think, one of the things that is important. Well, and the other thing, I remember when I started in my role, I got also a job description that was a bit, with some question marks. But when I started to talk with the executive board about my role, I had a few questions, and I immediately felt that they didn't know. And so I could do two things: turn my back and say, okay, sorry, this is not my place, or started to see this as an opportunity. And the reason that I accepted this as an opportunity was one conversation I had with a senior member of the board, because when I asked a few questions, he was very honest to me. And he said, Eric, we don't know the answers on the questions, but we hire you to help us on this. And so they showed already a kind of openness to the fact that they had no clue about how to do it, and they needed to have somebody for the company to help them to build it. And so that was for me enough, without knowing all the details and all the the ins and outs to say, okay, that's a good start to build a kind of, platform for design for this company. That was a huge task, because you talk about building creativity and design for a company that was, 100,000 people in so many different countries and had more than 25 business units. So very complex. So I remember, indeed, in the first couple of weeks, I had my executive introductions to the head of the CTO and the CMO and all the C-suite colleagues. And you could see that they didn't know and were not very used to creativity and design, and they were struggling understanding what it all was. And but yeah, some of them had the ignorance to explain to me what design was in my first meeting with them. And so I had to be very brutal then and say, well,
I love it.
You don't know anything about design, because if you would have known about design, the company would have had a flourishing design practice. But then after that, I got challenged all over the place by people asking me to explain what the value of design was, and particularly how the KPIs of design would be measured. And so I had one very simple answer to that. And I said always, well, the value of design, I measure it exactly the same as you measure the value in your area, either marketing or R&D or whatever it is. And then I asked them, how do you measure the value of marketing and the value of R&D? And then they came up with all of these wishy-washy, KPIs, like, the number of patents. And I said, okay, what does that mean? Because I know by coincidence that you only commercialized, say, 20 to 30% of your patents, and 70% of your patents is doing nothing and costed the company a hell of a lot of money. So what are you talking about, KPI? And so that was a kind of say a couple of weeks of turmoil. And then I had a meeting with the CEO, and I said to the CEO, hey, you know what? I'm challenged all over the place on explaining what the KPIs are and what the value of design is. You hired me to do design here, so I'm going to do design and not explaining all the time why I exist here in this company, because I have no time for that, because it cost me too much time to explain to everybody what the value of design is and what the KPIs are, while I would like to use my energy and my team's energy to build some great examples to demonstrate what the value of design was. And so he had a smile on his face, and he immediately understood actually what I'm asking for was, hey, you need to give me some time to build some proof points and to demonstrate some of the value of design, because if I don't get the oxygen to do so, then, we can better stop the whole exercise here. And so sometimes you need to be a bit, fearless in challenging your colleagues on these kind of things. Otherwise, you're not, you get stuck into a kind of a catch-22 that is not easy to get out.
So 2 things here. What is the first thing you did after these 2 weeks and confronting the CEO?
Well,
and why did he hire you? How did you get to that?
And so what I did is, in the first 2 weeks, I made a roadmap of what I thought was necessary to do to build design for the company. And in that same meeting with the CEO, talking about how the whole of the organization was challenging me on why he had hired me to do a job, I showed him my roadmap, which was a 1-pager, A4, showing a 5-year roadmap with 5 stages and, say, criteria of per stage of what I envisioned we needed to accomplish to create the right progress for the company on design. And I shared that with him and said, well, I tried to do this in 5 years, but I need your help on this. And the more you are able to support me on this, the closer I will be to the 5 years. But if we have to prioritize things, then maybe I can be busy for 20 years with this roadmap to accomplish this. And so that was the roadmap that I also then further developed with my leadership team. Not a lot, but because we had only a small team at that moment in time, say around 20 people. But that became then the kind of a roadmap for all of the organization for the coming 8 years that I worked for the company, to use as a kind of a map to help us as a lighthouse to go in the right direction.
You touched on KPIs here. This is like a recurring kind of conversation when you talk about not so tangible, results and metrics, where we increased X% and with X number of how do you get to convince, I would say, traditional minds in that sense, as per what you were talking about, to see for themselves that these not so tangible, let's say, metrics, if we're going to call them that way, are that important?
Well, first of all, when I was not around, design was reporting very often into the R&D or marketing organizations, and they have a tendency to give everybody kind of business-oriented KPIs, and in many cases, financial KPIs. And I started to refuse all of that because I said, well, listen, my designers are creatives, and they need to be having KPIs that are driven by creativity and by design quality and by excellence and by, their storytelling capabilities and whatever we all have and need to do as designers. So I rather like to use and measure the progress. So what I did on my roadmap, every year, or actually every half year, I measured the progress that I was making on the key points that I identified as being important per stage. And so it's much easier to measure the progress on something. And that can be anything. It can be the number of designers, or the quality of the design processes in place, or the number of engagements that you have across the company, or the number of projects that you have initiated, or whatever it is. So it's not always necessary to use these kind of, financial KPIs. It's a kind of a way of suggesting as if you are in control. But those numbers tell nothing in the end, or in many cases, they tell only one part of the story. So so I started to develop our own KPIs in relation to what was good for design.
Yeah, and I like your example on patents, actually, because all these corporations develop many patents, but it's true that many just sit there for ages and they're never used. And then you have...
Well, they say we use it to protect our business, but it's a lot of change money to protect your business.
Yeah. And I'd like to ask you, what did you like, or what gap did you want this book to fill?
When I was in the stage of reconsidering my future at 3M, because my intent was to be there for 5 years, but I was already almost 8 years there. So I thought, okay, I had to pioneer a lot during my career on design leadership and design management. And I saw there is a necessity to have strong leaders. So maybe through a book, I can help to summarize a lot of my lessons learned and failures and share with the community so that they can become more better and more fearless design leaders in the future and inspire them to become design leaders. So I started to engage with 2 professors, one from the university in Delft and one in Australia, and they were doing a study on design leadership and wanted to write a white paper about it. But they interviewed me for that as a design leader. And, there was so much stuff that we discussed that we decided to write a book about that. And so what we wanted to do is a few things. First of all, through the research of around 60 design leaders all around the world, and I'm talking about executive design leaders around the world, what I saw coming back is a lot of disappointment among those design leaders of not making the progress that they were hoping for to make in their companies. And I don't like the word frustration so much, but yeah, there was a kind of frustration among them that there's not a lot of progress. It is always, design used too much on a tactical level and all and the above. And what came back also is they mentioned many, many times, the business doesn't understand what design is about. And my question always was, have you explained it enough to the business? And it came clear to me that many of these design leaders didn't have any design governance, any governance for design, of how design would be connected within the company and would be enabled in the company. So the other parts of the company didn't know that design existed. They didn't know how to engage with design. They didn't know what the conditions were to engage with design. So there were a lot of these governance kind of questions that were totally not tackled. And that was one of the first things that I did in the company. Because if you don't know all of that, if design is not defined as a function, like marketing and R&D and so on, then nobody knows how to engage with you. And if they don't know who is investing for what and where the money comes from, and who, then it's very difficult to engage with design. So I started to immediately in the first year, started to build a governance around design and started to communicate about it. And I remember when I had defined all of that, of course, in close collaboration with HR and with the strategy department of the company and with the senior leadership of the company, the CEO asked me to present that to his board. And so I was there and I was talking about design and was talking about why is design so important. So I was able to explain to them the importance of design. Actually, I only had a couple of sheets. It was very simple to explain, actually. When people accepted my proposal for the governance, so my governance was design is reporting into design. Everybody in design is reporting into design, which was a bit uncommon. I was making the comparison and say, hey, why is it that finance people need to report into the finance leader? And why is it that the R&D people need to report into the CTO? And why is it that, legal is reporting into legal, irrespective of the fact that they are also engaging with different businesses and allocated in different businesses and have a focus on a business. And I said, yeah, I know why it is. That is because it is recognized as a capability. And so if you recognize design also as a capability, then design needs to be reporting into design. And so they agreed. And then the CEO did a remarkable thing. He looked around the table and he said, Eric, this is a very important decision for the company. And I think we need to make, he looked to his HR person, we need to make an all-desk announcement to everybody in the company around the world that we just have decided about the governance of design for the company. And by so, I did not only had the governance of design, but I also had a governance of design that was communicated through all of the company. So everybody knew about what the engagement conditions and engagement levels were to involve design in any project.
That's huge, actually.
That's it. But it doesn't change your world at all, because there's a difference between that recognition, which is helpful, but in the end, it all comes down to how it is implemented and how it is accepted. So actually, I said to my team when I came back, they gave me the same reaction and say, oh, congratulations, this is great. And I said to them, yes, it is great, but this is only the start of the beginning of something.
Yeah, and my follow-up actually to this is, that was amazing for sure, coming from the top, great announcement, but then you have the next day and the next hours and whatever, how to, if you want, enable in a way this change of mindset all across.
Yeah, so when I was in that same first meeting with the CEO, explaining to him on the KPIs and on my roadmap, I said to him, actually, you know what? You don't have hired me to build a design team somewhere in a corner in the organization and help you on innovation and design. Actually, you hired me, and my contribution to the company is all about how the company will work. So it will have an impact on how the company works in the end. Because there is a new kid on the block and a design function there. And now you have to start to integrate this into the core company processes to see how it is going to be engaging, what is our contribution, what can people expect from us, and so on and so on. So it impacted all the processes of the company in the end, but it was up to me and my team to define these kind of programs and processes to create clarity and to help the company to go into the next stage of implementation.
Yeah, you were, I guess, perceived like the disruptor in a way.
Yes.
And now, I mean, you're saying, AI all over the place. Do you feel, I mean, tell me your thoughts on, you have design as a capability, but you have the role, I guess, of educating everybody in the company on design to understand it, because obviously you can talk about it, but then people need to see it for themselves and get away with something to change the way they do. Maybe not everything, but a few things or one thing. And there's already something good. Do you see this also with design for sure, in a way? And you said something, I was taking notes at what you were saying. You said that You were in an organization with some people like the CEO, let's say, who had this openness. So do you see this also happening with AI in a way?
Well, any new capability is, of course, for some people a disruption and not welcomed very much because people see it as a challenge and a disruptor, and some other people are curious and are willing to explore. It's always a bit like the glass is half full and half empty. So that means that some people who always have the glasses half full, they are the ones that are energized by new opportunities, whatever it is, a new capability or like AI. You can have an approach like, how is it going to influence my role? And you see it as a threat, or you see it, some people see it as an opportunity. Oh, let's sit together and find out how we can make use of it. And so the same is for design. Some people are very much offended by the idea of getting these crazy designers in the company and what are they going to do. And some others are excited about it. And so what was my approach? I liked very much to go with the flow. So I can't find the article anymore, but I read once an article saying that if you want to change an organization, you need to have the square root of the number of that organization as ambassadors. So, and there's a kind of a theory behind it. So in my case, I was very down to earth. I was saying, if my company is 100,000 people, I only need to have 345 people to be an ambassador. And I didn't let myself be overwhelming by the fact that I needed to have 100,000 people as ambassadors. Because if I would have had those 300 ambassadors, then I would be successful, because those 300 are going to inspire and influence another 300, and so on and so on. And so I started to focus on just understanding who are the people that understand design, want to work with it, and have a kind of a positive attitude to it, and spend my energy with my team on those people. And so the philosophy is that if you then start to work with the people who are energized on it, then you start to create some first projects. You hope that those projects will reach the executive table and people start to refer to it. And then suddenly the people who ignored design for in the beginning feel, outsiders, because they are not seen as the ones that are early adapters, and now they want to join the party as well. And so this is getting a kind of a snowball in the end.
I guess, were you looking for people naturally curious, maybe not already sold on the whole design new thing, or?
Not all of them. You had different gradations in there. One who understood it. In the book, I write about a model that I call the 3 A's. And this is about creating awareness. You need to first create awareness to anybody, and then you are going to see who can appreciate what you bring to them. And then the ones that appreciate what you offer as design, hopefully a part of them become ambassadors. And ambassadors are the ones that structurally are willing to invest into design, who want to set up strategic collaboration, who are very transparent on their decision making on things in relation to design. And you don't need a lot of those ambassadors, because if you have a couple of them in important areas, that is good enough to do what you need to do. By the way, even if all of the company would have said, we love design, I would not have had the capacity to support them. So I needed to make choices anyhow.
Yeah. It's not Miracle Man, is it?
No.
So, question here: what made you get into design as a background yourself, but then into design leadership? Like what you liked, what you loved, what you wished?
Yeah, so if you think about design, I was a kid on high school having too many interests. I had 3 main interests. I was a technology guy, and so I liked, mathematics and physics and chemistry and all of that. But I was also making music, so I was playing jazz at that time, pretty active.
Which instrument?
The guitar. And so I had a lot of, jam sessions and, in town, and I was all over the place. But then I also was into art. big deal. So I didn't know what to do. Either go to the Academy of Art or to do a musician professional career, or going to do something technical. And that was such a big challenge for me that I needed to have some counseling on this. And that was in the 60s, probably early 60s, well, mid 60s and 60s, when somebody who advised to me, maybe you should look into design. Because design you can look at as a kind of a fusion between technology and art. And by that time I decided anyhow I didn't want to make my profession by music, because as a musician, because I liked it so much that I didn't want to be reliable on making money through all of that. That's my hobby. So, and then I started first to do, I got a degree on mechanical engineering and industrial engineering. And then after that, I went to the Academy of Art. And so I had that two kind of interests. So I guess it made it easier for me to speak the language and understand the language of both technology and the business side versus the artistic side of things. And so that's how I run into and grew into design. But then I was a designer, so actively designing in the first, say, 10 years of my career, or 5 to 10 years. And I started to realize that I saw all of these crazy, great ideas of people around me, but they never made it to commercialization. And that came all back to the fact that there was no appropriate design leadership behind all of that. Say, putting the right enabling conditions in place for designers to work together with other parts of the organization to get products into commercialization. And so I started to realize that maybe the impact as a designer, making great and having great ideas and developing great products, is maybe not the best place to create and amplify your impact. So that is where I started to realize that that maybe as a design leader, I can create more impact through design. And so after 5 years being a design practitioner, I started to become a design manager for one of the largest businesses of Philips. And from there, I started to grow into design leadership.
And what is it that you liked, wished, didn't like?
Well, what I like is to create conditions to make ideas happen. So I like that very much. Then the other one is love the collaboration across the parts of the organization, or in partnerships either as well, where you need to have use your empathy that you normally use as a designer to make the best solutions for customers. That empathy is also needed to make the right connections within the organization itself. I once said, if designers would use a bit more of their empathy to make better connections within the company, they would be much more successful designers, and design would be much more successful. And then my wish is, in the end, you wish to create a kind of enable a global culture of design in the company that will enable design to partner with other parts of the company to maximize the value and the impact of the organization. And again, whether it's through products or through services, that doesn't matter so much. And in what organization doesn't matter either as well. Because I come from a time where design was very much linked to R&D and manufacturing in a product company. But, nowadays you have so many companies that deliver services, or governments are very much into design nowadays as well, rightly, to make better connections with citizens in cities as well as in countries. So there's a lot of opportunity there for design.
So because you obviously worked in companies that have teams in multiple countries and regions. How do you keep standards consistent and governance across regions, business units, or maybe if you have an example to share?
Well, in order to be effective as a design team, you need to work as one design team around the world. And so I still see many companies, and I think the companies that you work for are maybe a bad example. And companies that are new to design are not a great example either, because they all built these kind of design hubs all around the world. And if any business or any business partner engages with one of these hubs, they experience complete different approaches to design in these hubs, because they are totally not aligned. And everybody is doing whatever they think is the best to do. And even worse, they compete with each other. So within one and the same company. So what we started to do is we started to have some, say, process development go to help us to create a kind of a foundation that was helping us to scale design in a very good level. If you don't have, a foundation agreed among the key stakeholders and within your own design team, I always say you are ready to scale for trouble. And, you don't want that. So we started to have and discuss one design approach. We have one design, for instance, a way to define a design brief. We had one way to engage with design, depending on the kind of projects. So we started to understand, promote, say, a kind of engagement with design that people would recognize as being a consistent one. And that helps a lot. So I think design is not doing themselves a favor at all, because they allow each designers around the world to do each their own thing. But even worse, I think, is that, the different capabilities in design, they put themselves each in the center of the universe. And so they start to explain to the business why service design is more important than user interface design or product design or communication design. And guess what? The business is completely confused because they don't know what to do anymore and with who to work anymore. And so that's why I like to refer to design. That's it. And within design, I always had more than 20 to 25 capabilities in my design teams. But I didn't allow the different capabilities to put themselves in the center of the universe. And because we all together should collaborate within our own team to create the optimal innovation solutions and customer experiences and brand experiences. And so we need to orchestrate that in a way that is orchestrated within design. And we should not bother the business with all the flavors of design and design capabilities that they anyhow do not understand and do not want to understand, to be honest.
Yeah, it's funny that you're saying this, because it's a bit, design is about, collaboration and setting up, if you want, this North Star and whatever. And then when it comes to design, it's like fighting on who's more important, but always complaining that no one's understanding design in a way.
So designers are not doing themselves a favor.
No. And we wonder why, right? Because they should actually be the first ones to understand why.
Yeah, I wrote an article in an academic paper about this, where I say we first, within design, need to align our approaches and processes and ways of working before we are able to effectively work with the other parts of the organization. And then there is another step. We need to first work across the full organization in a harmonious and well-defined way before we can start to dive into partnerships outside of the company. Because I have had worked throughout all my career for many, many different partners and partnerships. And it was clear, as soon as our own company was not aligned on the strategic intent of a project or the positioning of a project, you could immediately expect the project to be, blowing up, because there was no one foundation for the project to, align with the partner in a very effective way. So there's 3 phases in there. And my first thing is, hey, get your act together in design first before you start to work together with other parties in the company, and then get your other act right within the company before you start to do your partnerships.
Yeah, it's very much political, the way you're...
Well, you don't have to make it political. I like to keep it pragmatic.
I have another question here, actually. It's something, I was doing a bit of research, and obviously I read your book. So when is it better, in your opinion, to show design, like with demos, visuals, spaces, versus leaving room for imagination? Because sometimes when you display, right, people just are stuck to what they've seen and can't see beyond it.
It depends on the scope of the project, I would say, because I've done a lot of futures projects, and there you can have more open ends, and you want to actually inspire other stakeholders to contribute in their thinking and with their creativity to creating a vision of the future as well. But in some cases, it's very much, hands-on, and then you need to have a model. I did a lot of entrepreneurial things as well, because, between entrepreneurships and intrapreneurship, there's not a lot of differences between that. So my role as an intrapreneur within a company was also to get seed money for great new ideas. And I needed to go to the board and then get the money and investment and make things happen. And so I have seen that models can do and tell, a lot of stories in one go. and can make people immediately enthusiastic about an idea if they can experience the idea and the product. So sometimes models are very well vehicle to help your stakeholders to understand and experience the product at hand, and therefore it's easier to get their buy-in to the next phase of a project, for instance. But yeah, you need to be smart. So storytelling is an important thing here. I remember when I came into the company, immediately I started to talk about a design center that was not there. And I said, so if the designers report to design, and if designers are allocated in one place, like an R&D center, then we need to start to have a design center and start to think about it. And so I was just a couple of weeks in the company, and I said, well, I think I need to have a design center for 200 people, 250 people. We need to think now about the investments and the place where to build that center, because if we are not in time, then I have my 150 people and then I don't know where to sit anymore. And so then we have an issue. And so the first thing I started to do is I sent a book to the CEO, and I have the book still here. It was a book about the best workplaces to work for. And I sent the book to him, and I faked the cover with a M Design Center image on the front. And I sent an email to him and I say, hey, I'm happy to be here and building design, but we need to start to build about a design center. And I would like to love your support on this as we go. And it would be nice if in the next edition of this book, the 3M Design Center would be in there. And so I just sent the book to him.
Wow.
And that was in a couple of weeks' time. And I later on, when the governance was agreed, because I was asking for the money for the design center, but the CEO said, well, we don't have a governance for design and we don't know. Let's first tackle that. So when we had that design governance thing done, I could come back for the design center. And so I said, hey, R&D people need laboratories, say administration people need offices, and designers need a design studio. So, and I made an 3D, Google 3D prototype of how the design center could look like. And so I went into the CEO meeting proposing all of that with the engineers of where the design center could be, how big it would be, how much the cost would be, how it would look like. But when I needed to prepare for that, I asked people, what is the best way to get my funds going? And how can I go best into that CEO meeting on my design center investment? Well, all the people said to me, you need to build a business case. And I gave it 2 days to think about it. And I decided no business case. Designers are not good at business cases. Nobody would expect a business case from a designer. I have to go in there with a strong inspirational story about what the impact of a design center could be for the company. So no design, business case. I went in with a couple of pages, and the one page was a page that was linked to the newly introduced brand platform of the company, Science Applied to Life, which was done with my team and the CMO and myself together to build a new brand for the company. And I said, hey, science applied to life. And I said, science, we have more than 7 R&D centers around the world. So we are covered on that part, science. And then I went to the part to life, and I said, well, we have 46 application centers around the world where customers come in every day, where they can experience our technologies and where we engage to understand the inside of our customer better. So we can mark that one as well. And then I said, applied. I said, that is exactly what design is doing. Design is applying technology to customers. And so we don't have a design center. So we need to, so we just introduced a new brand platform, Science Applied to Life, but the whole applied part is what design is going to do. So that was one page I had. And then the engineers had a couple of pages on costs and square meters and location and all of that. And then I had one other page, and that was I made a fake New York Times article where I shared my vision on what the impact and the need of a design center would be for the company at large. I handed over that sheet to all of the board members and I left the room. I got my investment, and later I heard from the senior management that they never experienced anything like this, because normally they all come in with a business case. And here I come in with no business case, with an inspirational story, and I get my multi-million investment for the project.
And how did that evolve over time? Because you had design centers all around.
Yeah, so we had the design center built in the headquarters, and then we opened 4 design centers around the world. And yeah, we started to engage more and more with people in the company. We had more partnerships, and we started to go, because I mentioned to you, I made a decision to drive design as a strategy for the company, not as a tactical. And so I started to get, the design of the design center was done by me and my team, and that started to become a kind of a new blueprint for the offices for the company into the future. As a design leader, I was not only involved in setting up a design team with the right capabilities in many different countries, getting involved with many different businesses to drive value for the company, but also, again here, remember what I said at the beginning, it was all about how the company works. And so I started to work with the strategy team on all kind of futures work, and so on, and so on, and so on. So we elevated, indeed, the role of design in the company by having an approach and making a choice of driving design as a strategy.
And this actually links to something you mentioned in the book about saying no.
Yes.
How did you approach that?
The way I look at it, I assume that if you, on an individual level or on a group's level, if you have a design team, for instance, you have a vision in mind and you have a strategy to get you to that vision. But what I see is that I look at it as getting to the vision as driving a car. And so in a car, you need to have a steering wheel, and the steering wheel need to go to the left side and to the right side. And the one side is yes, and the one is no. And if you are not able to say no, you are turning in circles because you only to go to one direction. And you will never reach your destination in the end. And so I always supported my team that they are in a position to always say no to certain propositions if they feel that it is not an appropriate proposition. But you always need to do it based on the right arguments. You need to do it with respect, and it needs to be supporting a purpose, a larger purpose. In this case, the purpose of the company. And so saying no is extremely important because you cannot do everything. You have to prioritize things, and therefore you need to feel enabled to agree and disagree on things that come along. You need to start to decide on individual level or on team level what is good for the team and you as an individual and what not. And that hopefully helps you to bring you closer and faster to your end goal.
I have a few questions, so we wrap up. Otherwise, I can stay forever asking you based on what you're saying as well. But, for a new design leader coming in today, what should they, let's say, aim for or secure early on just to secure this confidence?
Yeah, well, the confidence comes with, how you call it, based on practice. I could only be so bold in certain circumstances because I have seen it, I have been through it, and you know how to deal with the flavors that go around. But there are a few things that are important, in my opinion, if you want to be a successful or effective design leader. First of all, collaboration. By the way, when I started in 3M, I introduced collaborative creativity as a theme for design. And so actually what I was saying is, hey, we are here as a creative force, and we want to collaborate with all of you. And so designers are not very effective if they sit in their ivory towers and start to do things in isolation, not effective. So collaborative. You need to collaborate. And there it helps if you speak the language of your different partners in marketing and strategy, technology and manufacturing. The next one is resilience. You need to build a certain resilience. Otherwise, get that frustration or disappointment if things are not going the way you had envisioned. As a design team, that is our role. We need to do and go and think further than the obvious, because otherwise we have no role here. And that comes with resistance. And yes, you need to build resilience to handle that resistance. And so actually my story was, you need to embrace that resistance because it's a kind of sign that you have done your work good and that you have stretched far enough. So resilience is an important thing. You have to build on that. Then I mentioned it already, engaging storytelling. So the best compliment I got on the design center when it was finished was somebody came to me. He did a tour in the new design center when it was opened with a grand opening. And he said, Eric, when you were talking in the first couple of weeks about the design center, you were talking about it as if the design center was there already. That was the best compliment I could get, because I think that's how you inspire people and how you pull people into your story. Okay, then business acumen. So you need to be able to understand the language of the business, but also to speak the business language. And there I have to make a note that what I see many young designers do, or even in their mid-careers, they start to behave like business people, which is, in my opinion, totally not good. So if you start to talk all the time like business people, you lose your cutting edge as a creative designer and a creative lead. There's no added value anymore, in my opinion. So I think, yes, you need to understand the language and you need to speak the language of business, but don't start to behave like a business leader, because as soon as you do that, you're losing your cutting edge, in my opinion. And then I mentioned already the ability to say no, or actually to navigate your opportunities by saying yes and no, or agreeing and disagreeing, in order to bring you to the North Star that you hopefully have defined. And the last one is, I think, train your muscle on influencing, because influencing is a kind of way of impacting that goes beyond authority. So the influencing skills are very important, and that goes back to the square root of the number of the organization to get your ambassadors in place. If you have a great idea and you test the idea in the organization and people buy into it, then go and find your ambassadors and start to amplify the idea. And then as soon as the idea starts to become the norm, or as soon as your idea is going to present it by other people as their idea, you have done your job well.
I want to do a super quick round of a few questions. What's your relationship with your gut, intuition, in that sense?
Well, I do a lot of things intuitive, and that is driven by the empathy, because you continuously navigate in your environment, and you need to balance a lot of the things here as well. So by understanding the business doesn't mean that you have to please the business all the time, but it means that you want to drive progress and that you have a kind of a sensitivity to navigate all of that complexity. We talk about dualities in the book very much, and so there's a lot of these dualities that makes a design leadership role very complex. And those dualities, there are no books to know when to decide on what. It is your guts that need to help you to navigate about it, and your experience will help you to be more, experienced and secure in navigating all of that complexity. So yes, I see AI, for instance, as a great opportunity, but it is only a great opportunity if you know how to use it effectively. And that was the same with internet, and that was the same with computer-aided design. If you start to use it blindly, and without empathy and without understanding context, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So guts is an important thing. Again, you need to balance this with facts and figures as well, now and then.
And that might be a funny one. The most harmful KPI you see teams worship?
Well, that's the whole financial thing that comes back all the time. And so to just get your KPIs in terms of what makes sense for design and a designer, and measure the progress. And that should lead to great projects that then you can put financial KPIs and other metrics too.
And you talk a lot about design and creativity, and a lot of things you spoke about today. Creative people do relate to them, but not to, in a different way. They could be part of it, because creativity, we're in a way, sorry.
Creativity is for all.
It's for all, correct. Yeah. So how working with creative people?
Yeah, I love it to work with creative technicians, manufacturing people, because they understand my issue in the innovation process, and therefore they come up with creative ideas. Even finance people, they can't be too creative, by the way, but they, if they can help me in making and finding and defining a new business model, or a different business model that supports my idea, that's exactly what I need, because I'm not a finance expert. So creativity is by all, but the fact that you are creative doesn't mean that you are a designer.
No.
And the same is for
sure.
design thinking. So that's one of the overvalued areas of design, is the whole design thinking. It's very democratized, which is good at one side. But at the other side, people who have done a training in design thinking, they start to feel they are designers. And so I always have to remind them that by doing a design thinking training doesn't make you a designer.
Yeah, that's been my relentless struggle, to be honest, in the last few years, to see how do I present myself. And because of that, it's difficult sometimes.
I have had these discussions with people that ask me for advice and say, hey, I'm interested in the business side, but I'm also a designer. What do you recommend in terms of my career? And I said, you need to make a choice. And there's nothing wrong by evolving your career into a business role. So if you feel that is a good career opportunity, but it is not easy to come back to design anymore if you have done that. So then my question is, where is the uniqueness of capabilities? In business or in design? There are not many designers around. I mean, design designers. And there are many business people on marketing, business, and all of that. So if you think about a career, you have a unique educational background. You have unique skills. So maybe you can make a choice to spend your life in design, because it's there where you have a lot of unique opportunities.
I like how you framed this. Is there anything you would like to add we didn't touch on?
Yes, because you had a very interesting question that I think is an important one to tackle. And that is, what is the one question every CEO should ask the head of design?
Yeah, I was like aware of the time, like maybe I should ask it, maybe not, but I'm glad you're going to do it. Yes.
So the question that I would ask as a CEO to any design leader is, how much is the company investing now into design? And the next question is then, how much should the company invest into design? And there's a whole story behind this, because I was in that same first meeting with the CEO, and I asked him, how much is the company investing into design? And I knew the answer. He didn't know. And there is a saying going on that design is the largest budget that CEOs don't know about. Because if he thinks that design investment is what the number of designers are in the company, that's not true, because many business people around the world are engaging with design consultancies all around the world to create a big mess on the brand experience, by the way. And all that investment is hidden on the marketing and in R&D a bit here and there and all over the place. And so if the company is thinking they invest X million into design, then probably we have done the exercise for Philips once, probably you have to tenfold this amount to the real investment. And so that is an interesting question. By the way, that question is also interesting for R&D. So how much are we investing into R&D? Probably they are better able to monitor all of that. But then the difficult question is, what would be the appropriate amount to invest into R&D or in marketing or in branding and so on? And that's not easy to answer, because it all depends on the structure and the complexity of your company. And it is very often driven by comparison research, competitive research with other companies to see how much they invest and what is a kind of a golden standard, and then see how you can relate that to your own company.
I didn't know that they had no idea about how much actually.
No, because it's not only 3M, many companies don't have, because it is not easy to monitor if you do not have a capability defined at the center and have allocated all the budgets and investments related to that to monitor that in your financial systems. Yeah. And for design, it's not done. For marketing and branding, it's also very difficult, by the way. But anyhow, so that would be an interesting question.
Thank you so much for this.
My pleasure.